I got this neighbor who wants to be rude about everything. Everything I do, rude. Try to walk down the street, rude. Try to collect my newspaper from the street, rude. Well, guys, my neighbor simply went too far this time, and I'm thinking of one word, and you might know what that word is. It's revenge, and I'm going for it now. Hello, my fellow readers. So here's the deal. I'm a 48-year-old guy, not exactly the life of the party type, but I get by. I live in this comfortable little neighborhood, nothing fancy. It's just me and my dog Buster, a big old mutt with more personality than most people I know. We've got our routine down to a science. I'm talking morning walks, even fetch sessions, and the occasional run around the park. Life's been pretty steady, predictable even. That's until about 3 weeks back when the first sales sign on a house a couple doors down finally flipped to sold. I didn't think much of it at the time. People move in and out, it's the circle of suburban life. But the new folks, well, they're a different breed. The first time I noticed something was off was on one of those regular dog walks with Buster. I'm walking past their house and there's this odd, almost eerie silence around it, right? No moving vans, no hellos, no nothing. Just a few curtains twitching like they've got a life of their own. Not the usual new neighbor buzz. You know what I mean? Anyways, I shrugged it off, figuring maybe they were just some private people. But over the next few days, I could not shake off this nagging feeling. Every time I'd drive by, I'd give them a neighborly wave, the standard welcome to the block gesture. That's just being decent, right? But I might as well have been waving at the statues in my aunt's garden because all I got back were blank stares. No smiles, no nods, just them watching me like I was a TV show. They weren't particularly interested in. These two neighbors had everyone raising their eyebrows, and now I consider myself a pretty open-minded guy. I've met all sorts of people in my time, and it takes a lot to get me riled up. So I did not let it bother me too much. Everyone's got their quirks, right? But there's something about the way that they would just watch me pass by that gave me the heebie-jeebies. Buster did not seem too keen on them either, and he's the kind that would make friends with a lamppost. They weren't noisy, they weren't messy, they didn't throw wild parties. In fact, they were so quiet you would forget somebody was even living there. But you know how it is. Sometimes it's the quiet ones you've got to watch out for. It's a strange thing to say, but I miss the days when the only drama around here was kids being loud in the neighborhood. But now I don't know why, I've just got this feeling in my stomach that there's a storm brewing. Whatever it is, I can't shake the thought that things are about to get very interesting. And I'm gonna say it's not necessarily in a good way. Update number 1. Hey guys. So 2 months has slipped by since the peculiar new neighbors moved in, and I'll be honest, they've pretty much faded into the background of my day-to-day life. They were like those old, knickknacks you keep in the attic, you know, like a slinky or, what are those little things called? Oh, yo-yos. Anyways, they kept to themselves, never even so much as a peep. No backyard barbecues or front porch pleasantries. They could have been phantoms for all I knew. Well, Buster and I continued our daily jaunts around the block, me nodding to the usual faces and him chasing his tail, living the doggy dream. The new guys were never out and about, and honestly, I almost forgot they existed. But as life loves to remind us, just when you think you've got it figured out, it throws a curveball. It was a crisp Thursday morning, the kind that hinted at autumn just around the corner. I had my steaming cup of hot joe in my hand, and Buster was doing his thing, you know, sniffing every blade of grass as he's discovered the meaning of life in one of them. We were rounding the block, and as fate would have it, we passed the household. Now, Buster is a smart puppy. He knows the drill. Do his business before we hit the road. So when we veered a little onto their patch of grass, it was innocent, just a dog doing doggy things. But then, like a jack-in-the-box, one of the neighbors sprung out of the front door. The guy was a middle-aged dude, with a face like he had been weaned on a pickle. He started laying into me like I'd set fire to his mailbox. Hey, you keep that mutt off my lawn. Oh, he barked, and words sharp as nails. I stood there, coffee in hand, a dog at my heels, completely baffled. At first, I busted out a little chuckle, a laugh. It was over the top, right? So, out of left field, that it had to be a joke, right? Buster just waltzed onto the guy's turf. It's not like he was even digging for buried treasure. But the neighbor's glare was colder than a witch's breast in January. That's when it clicked that this fellow was dead serious. So I straightened up, putting on my neighborly but not too messed with face. I say, look, he wasn't going to do his business on your lawn. We're just walking here, man. The dude responded, well, by looking at us, not saying a word, not a nod, nothing. Just staring at me with these eyes like drill bits. Now, I've dealt with all sorts of my time, grumpy, happy, loony, you name it, but this guy was a whole new category. I locked eyes with him, giving back as good as I could, and Buster, sensing the tension, let out a loud growl. His hackles raised, and I tugged on his leash gently and said, "Come on, Buster." I muttered, and we walked away. I glanced back once, and the guy was still there, statue still, watching us leave. That encounter left a serious sour taste in my mouth, like I'd chewed on a wasp. What was the big deal? It's not like we were the local troublemakers. Buster's a good boy, and I took pride in being a decent neighbor. But this guy's off his rocker. I could not shake the encounter all day. It was just in the back of my mind, like an itch in a spot you just can't reach. Buster seemed to feel it too. He was quiet, subdued even, and I told myself to let it go. Some people just don't know how to play nice, but from that day on, things took a turn. I started to see them more. They appeared suddenly, like they were popping out of thin air, no greetings, just those blank stares. I started to wonder if they had beef with the whole street or just a special reservation for me and Buster. But I'm not one to poke my nose where it doesn't belong. I kept to myself. I kept Buster close and maintained the peace. At least that's what I tried to do, but something told me this was not the end of it. Wow, something about that. Update number 2. Hey guys, so it's been a month since the lawn incident with Buster, and I thought that I would put the whole weird exchange behind me. Life in our little community went on. That's when I started hearing more about my strange neighbors. Talk of the neighborhood was that these guys weren't just unfriendly, they were flat out rude. They were like a dark cloud hovering over our sunny little street. I've been avoiding that stretch of the sidewalk like it was a curse, but then, one evening, as I was gearing up for a walk with Buster before dinner, a stubbornness took a hold of me. Why should I change my route? It's my neighborhood too, and I'll be damned if I feel unwelcome in my own territory. So Buster and I set off. His leash in mind and hand, and I could feel the weight of the previous encounter like a heavy coat. As we neared the house, I saw him, that same old neighbor, right there in his driveway, fussing over his car with a house and a bucket. The picture of suburban normalcy. I steadied myself, ready to just walk by, minding my own business, when I saw him glance up. Our eyes met, and something in his gaze flickered. A kind of malicious recognition, and as we drew level with his driveway, the atmosphere was so thick with tension. Without warning, he swiveled the hose and a jet of water came arcing towards us. Droplets splattered my jeans and Buster's coat. Scram! Stay the hell away from our house! He yelled at me, and he was still aiming the hose with a vindictive precision. I stopped dead in my tracks with, a mix of anger and flashing hots in my chest. Water dropped down my face and Buster shook off his coat, confused and startled, and I said, "What the hell's your problem, man? We're on a public sidewalk, dude." But the guy, he just kept on spraying. A twisted smirk played on his lips, and every time I opened my mouth to shout back, a fresh surge of water would cut me off. It was like arguing with a malfunctioning sprinkler system. The spectacle drew out other neighbors, and their faces were concerned. Curtains twitched, doors cracked open, and soon there was an audience of this absurd one-man water show. But instead of calming down, he gets more riled up, hollering about trespassers and respect. I was fuming. Every fiber of my being vibrated with the need to set this right. I knew I should have called the cops, letting them handle it, but there's something about being attacked, unprovoked in your own neighborhood that gets the blood boiling in a way, reason can't cool. Without Buster, now cowering behind me, I turned on my heels, soaked to the bone, and walked away. I could feel the eyes on me, the silent support of my fellow neighbors, and the burning embarrassment that came with being made into a spectacle. As I walked back home, my skin prickled with 1,000 tiny needles of frustration and cold water. I wanted to strike back, to get even, to do something that would wipe that smug look off his face. It was clear this guy did not follow rules of neighborly conduct, and it seemed that he was hell-bent on declaring war over some imagined slight. Dinner sat heavy in my stomach that night. The urge for retribution grew with every replay of the afternoon's events in my head. Buster, still damp and jittery, stuck to me like glue, his usual spirited self replaced by a quiet unease. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling and the day's light fading into the blue-black of night. This wasn't just about me and Buster anymore. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling. The day's light faded into the blue-black of night, and this wasn't just about me and Buster. Not anymore. It's about the piece of our community that we found peace in for so long. The unspoken agreement that we all lived day by day to live respectful and look out for one another. This neighbor just trampled on that agreement, and it was up to me to figure out how to mend the tear before it ripped wide. As sleep finally began to claim me, one coherent thought rose above the pool of anger. I wanted payback. Not just any petty revenge, but something fitting. Something that would make him think twice before he messed with me. With Buster, or with any of us again. Update number 3. For days, and I really mean days, after the hose incident, my mind would race with all sorts of revenge scenarios, each one more elaborate than the last. But I didn't want anything that could land me in hot water, metaphorically or legally. Then, as if inspired by Buster's own simple logic, it struck me. The perfect plan. It was crude, yes, but it felt fittingly primal. I began to collect Buster's droppings each day, adding to the growing pile in the bucket hidden away in my garage. It felt weird, sure, collecting poop like some bizarre treasure, but every scoop was a balm to my agitated thoughts. After several days, the bucket was alarmingly heavy. The contents a testament to Buster's healthy diet and my festering grudge. The stench was foul and pungent aroma of retribution. I waited for the perfect night, one cloaked in a moonless sky. You see, the perfect cover for a deed most would find despicable. In my mind, though, I would just consider it justice. With a pair of rubber gloves and the bucket now diluted with just enough water to make it manageable, I stepped out into the night. The quiet of the neighborhood was a stark contrast to the pounding of my heart, adrenaline already coursing through my veins. My target was in sight. The neighbor's car. The very one that he had been washing when he decided to turn his hose on me and Buster. It sat there in the driveway, unaware of the fate about to befall upon it. Approaching the vehicle, a part of me felt like I was back in my teenage years. The thrill of mischief. Without any hesitation, I reached into the bucket, my gloves. Hand emerged with a sludgy, vile substance, and I smeared it across the windows, windshields, mirrors, and wheels with a wide sort of glee. Anyways, the once pristine car now looked like a canvas of vengeance. I didn't stop there, no. The white garage door became my next victim. The dark smears standing out starkly against the clean surface. The bucket at this point was nearly empty. But there was just enough left for the finale. With a heave, I flung the remaining muck all over their front door, the splat of their contents hitting the door a chorus to my pounding heart. I did not linger to admire my handiwork. I quickly turned on my heel and made a beeline for the home. The bucket was rinsed out and stowed away as evidence of my nocturnal activities washed down the drain. I knew it wasn't the most mature move, but in the moment as the water ran over me, it felt like it was the best decision I've made in weeks. As I dried off and settled down, well, I was either going to wake up with the wrath of a neighbor scorning me or the silence of one who realized that they've been bested at their own game of petty neighborhood antics. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of this morning discovery. I had not just crossed a line. I smeared it with dog poop. Update number 4. This is the final update of the story. A week has slipped past since the night I decided to get even with my strange neighbor, and life, it seems, has a funny way of surprising you. The morning after my late-night escapade, I woke up to a subtle buzz in the neighborhood. I could see the police were next door. My heart was just pounding in my chest like a jackhammer. I watched through the blinds as officers went from door to door, including mine. I played the part of the ignorant neighbor perfectly. A look of surprise here, a look of surprise there, a shrug of confusion, and they seemed to buy it. Well, they had nothing to go on, just a bucket's worth of suspicion and no real evidence. Once they left, a part of me felt like celebrating. I had pulled off a perfect prank. But nothing stays secret in the suburbs for long, because a few days later, Ray, the neighbor who lives between me and the odd family down the street, came over. He's a good guy, a bit of a gossiper, but solid. He brought over a couple of cold beers and we settled onto the porch. The summer evening, lazy, stretched out before us. We chatted about the neighborhood, who was, renovating their kitchen, who was likely to sell the house soon, the usual talk. But then he brought up the incident. Oh boy. Ray described how the neighborhood had been buzzing about it, how everyone thought it was a hoot, given how those folks have been acting since they moved in. I chuckled along, keeping my face neutral, then he said it. His voice even dropped a notch. Hey man, I know you did it. I caught you on my home camera. I love those Ring cameras. My heart skipped a beat. I could feel the blood drain from my face, but I held my expression steady. Before I could formulate a response, he raised his hands and said, "Hey man, chill out. Don't worry. I'm not gonna rat you out. Honestly, they had it coming, dude. And now I know not to get on your bad side. Enjoy the beer, man. Drink up." He laughed, with his voice carrying a note of genuine amusement. We laughed it off, and Ray eventually left, six-pack in hand, empty. But his words lingered in my mind. In the days that followed, things were quiet. Maybe too quiet. I caught myself scanning the streets more than usual, eyeing any car that drove by a little too slow. Any car that looped around the block. But nothing happened. No revenge, no angry confrontations, nothing. I'd like to think my message was received loud and clear, a line drawn in the proverbial sand that said, "Don't mess with me, or my damn dog." I'm not naive enough to think that this is the end of it, but for now there's a sense of normalcy that's returned to the air. I can walk Buster without glancing over my shoulder, and that's more peace of mind than I've had in weeks. But here's where I need to level with you, the invisible audience on the other side of my story. I've gone back and forth about whether I did the right thing. I've never been one of pranks or revenge, but I have to admit it felt damn good. It felt like I had control. So after dishing out a stinky form of justice for a hose down, do you think that I'm the a-hole for a payback prank that I pulled off with lightning acceleration? Top comments from the original post. We're going to check out the first comment that says this. "Man, I've seen some wild stuff, but this is another level of you did not stoop to the violence, which is commendable. Instead, you chose a harmless, smelly method of standing your ground. Honestly, anybody who's willing to hose down a person and their dog unprovoked is asking for negative karma. It's a dirty game. But sometimes you gotta fight fire with fire. Or, in this case, poop. Not all heroes wear capes, some just carry buckets. Not the a-hole, my friend. You dished out a little street justice, and sometimes That's the only language bullies understand. Comment number 2. Look, I totally get the impulse to hit back, but dude, this could have gone south so fast. Imagine if they had security cameras, not the cool neighbor. That's vandalism, and it could have ended you up in handcuffs instead of just washing your hands clean. It's 2023. There's always a camera somewhere. You got lucky with Ryan, but that luck eventually runs out, my friend. Next time, just call the cops and handle it like an adult. You are the a-hole, not for the prank, but for risking serious legal repercussions over a neighborly feud. Comment number 3. Bro, I'm barely 20, but even I know you don't just spray people and their pets for walking on a sidewalk. The neighbor was out of line. You didn't punch him, which is probably what I would have done, and you didn't break anything. A little poop never hurt anybody. Not the a-hole. He started the war, and you just ended it with a bang. Well, I guess it's considered a bang. Anyways, it's gross, sure, but it's the kind of legendary prank that gets talked about for years. You're practically a neighborhood folk hero. Final comment. Everybody sucks here. I've always believed in communication first. Spraying you was a wild overreaction, no question about it, but retaliation, that's where you're both wrong. You both contributed to this toxic neighborhood drama. Sure, he was the instigator, but instead of de-escalating, you upped the ante? Everyone sucks here. Maybe a calm conversation could have settled this, or perhaps he was beyond reason. I guess we'll never know, will we? As I'm going to have to rock with most of the comments on today's video and say I agree with the not the jerk outcome, it seemed that most of the commenters were saying OP was not the one that was in the worst of it, so not the a-hole has to be the only answer, right? But I do want to mention the one comment that said you are the a-hole, because they did point out a very good positioning. They said, OP, you know what? I don't know if you're the a-hole, I don't know if you're the idiot, but there's one thing that you overlooked. It is 2023. There was probably a security camera somewhere, and yeah, you're lucky that you never got caught, but come on, you can't be making these stupid rookie mistakes all in the name of revenge when you could have ended up going to jail just because you decided to invoke this act of petty revenge and get caught on camera. I want to know your thoughts, guys. Do you agree with the not the a-hole ruling, or do you agree with the you are the a-hole ruling that says, hey, you need to be a bit more careful? I want to know your thoughts, so drop it down below in the comment section, guys. This is my revenge channel. Every single story has something to do with revenge. And if you want to be a part of these daily revenge stories, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And yeah, this is a revenge channel, but it's still cool to be kind. Peace.